Quick Hits.
It's time for Hobby Quick Hits. Hobby Quick Hits. A sports card podcast where we tackle the hobby's hottest topics in depth to help you navigate the sports card landscape and enjoy the hobby we all love. Here's your host, John Newman.
All right, time for another episode of Hobby Quick Hits. I do grading. I submit cards. I sell graded cards, and people know that, so I get asked a lot of grading questions. I've done multiple shows pertaining to grading as far as how I do it, my process, tools you should use, tips, tricks, techniques. I've done all that stuff. But I get asked a lot kind of to give my take on kind of the current landscape with what's going on. And I touch on that, obviously, on Sports Card Nation when we do the Hobby What's Up segment. But I haven't done really Hobby Quick Hits, kind of where I tackle the topic, especially here post-national, where we're at, what the landscape is presenting us. And so I figured this would be a good opportunity to go ahead and tackle that. Again, like I said, got enough people asking for it, so a lot of times these episodes are born out of demand or request, and this will probably fit that description. But before we talk about grading, let's hear from our great sponsor, Mojo Breaks. Hey folks, wanted to tell you about the best place to get some of your sealed sports card wax products. Great selection and some of the lowest prices on the web. MojoBreakShop.com is that place. Whether it's a box or a whole case, they're your guys, and they ship around the world right to your door. The Mojo Break name is one of the most trusted in the hobby. From sports cards to Pokemon, their selection can't be beat. They offer daily deals and pre-orders. Who won first place at this year's Topps Rip Party? None other than Mojo Break. Their prices are already great, but here's a way to save even more money. Use the code QUICKHITS, that's QUICKHITS, for 10% off anything on MojoBreakShop.com. They also have a full-service card shop in Santa Clara, California. So if you're in the area, stop by. They're open 7 days a week, so check them out at MojoBreakShop.com. All right, let's tackle the grading landscape, if you will. All right, so you know me, I like to be fully transparent. What grading companies do I use? Beckett, SGC, PSA. What some people call the big three. I know there's a lot more. Those are the ones I use. Predominantly SGC. They sponsor the show, but that's not why. I actually used them before they were even a sponsor. And PSA, every once in a while, Beckett. And we'll kind of go over reasons why I may use certain ones and why I like certain ones and that sort of thing. So the one thing we've seen in the grading land, before we get into submission rates and turnaround times, all the hot button topics of grading, let's talk about the grading field in general. It's expanded, right? We've got all these new companies, CSG, HGA, don't get me started there. I'll just leave it at that. Black Mamba, Forensic Grading Corp or something like that. Precision. I mean, I would say if you searched and start writing grading company names down that either are currently in existence or very recently in existence, that number would top out at about 100 grading companies. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Not embellishing. It's not the fishes this big that I caught. They're literally about 100 grading companies, GMA, and just numerous ones. Now, obviously, some are more recognizable. Some are taking on a lot more cards and that sort of thing. And so, generally, this conversation is going to be geared pertaining to the big boys, right? Because most people who submit cards, not all, but most people who submit cards for grading are doing it to enhance the value of said card. Now, some people slab just for protection. I've done both. Full disclosure again, I've sub cards because I feel they're going to be worth more with the grade they're going to garner, and I've sub cards where I know the card might be a little rough shape, but it's sentimental, and I'm not selling it. It's just staying in my PC. I have one in now, the SGC, that would fit the description. It's the 1952 Andy Pafko #1 Topps card, and it's beat up. It's not in great shape. Probably not even gonna. Probably might get just the A for authentic. Might not even garner a 1, and I knew that before I subbed it. But it's an iconic card for being that first card. Usually in beat up shape just from being rubber band damage. Now this one is in far worse shape than most. So it's just the iconic card. I want it slabbed. It's not for sale. It's going to stay in my office. Maybe sometimes I'll put it in the showcase at a show just to kind of have it out there, kind of a thing, and that sort of thing. So I fall on both sides of that aisle. So we're going to talk about, mainly the big boys. Whether and we can argue. I know some would make the argument that a couple of the ones I don't consider big boys are big boys. I mean, to each their own. So, some people don't like grading, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's more than one way to hobby. I've said that from the minute I turned on the mic. Some people don't like relic cards. They don't buy them or get them, or if they pull one, they get rid of it. Same thing with grading. Some people just don't want anything to do with it. Nothing wrong with that. I deal in graded cards. I deal in raw cards. I like both sides of that aisle. So, one of the big complaints, is right now the PSA and Beckett high submission levels, right? First off, why did it happen? I think we all know why, right? Pretty self-explanatory, but they were getting overwhelmed with submissions, backlogged months, if not years, and they had to stem the flow. How do you stem the flow? Raise your prices to levels where only certain cards get submitted, and you still maintain a business level, and you only get certain cards that allows you to catch up on your backlog. And that's why those companies did it. And full disclosure, PSA and Beckett weren't the only ones to do it. SGC went to $100 for about a month themselves, and other companies also raised their prices as well, because as the PSAs and Beckett's raised their prices, many other people turned to the other companies and started subbing their way, and they fell into the same pratfall and had, as they would say, no other choice but to follow suit. Maybe not as high of a raise in price, but they too raised their prices. And now SGC has lowered their prices back down to the $30 level. They do bulk. They have some bulk subbers where you can get in a little bit cheaper. And right now, and again, this is just being honest, whether they're a sponsor or not, they have right now the quickest turnaround time that I'm aware of in the industry among the big boys. I'll keep saying that. So at about 12 to 14 days from when you send it to when you get it back. Think about that. Think about that time. So I don't want to be an infomercial. They are a sponsor, but again, I don't want to be an infomercial. But one of the things, forget the turnaround times and the lower price level or more reasonable price level. I like SGC because they're pretty strict graders. And I don't know about you. I know some people may not like that because they want every card they send in to be a 10. Well, I do too, but I also want it to earn that 10. And I know when SGC gives back a 10, that's, they're one of the tougher graders if you ask me. And some people may not like that because they just want the 10 any way they can slice it. And others want to, really want that 10 to have some substance behind it. Now, I know the argument, a PSA brings more money on the secondary market. And I'm not going to stand here in front of this microphone and say you're wrong, Because you're right, they do. But what I will say is that gap has closed rather than widened. And so we've seen some SGC cards and even other companies go for significant amounts of money, and in some cases even more. Not across the board, but in some cases an SGC counterpart or another company have brought more. I mean, again, it's an odd comparison, but I mean, some of the biggest sales recently have been SGC graded cards. Now, it's more the card and then obviously the grading company. Let's be realistic, right? An SGC 3 Honus Wagner is bringing $6.6 million because it's an Honus Wagner T206. But we can't discount completely that card's in an SGC holder. If you're a company and your company graded the most expensive card ever sold, you're going to wear that like a badge of honor too, and rightfully so. And right now, SGC holds that crown. The next card I believe that might break that record is also in an SGC holder. Now again, it's all speculation. It's my prediction. I could be wrong. I've been wrong on predictions before. I'll be wrong on predictions again. But I think that Baltimore News, 1914, Babe Ruth, is going to be that next card that may break the $10 million for the first time threshold. I don't know for sure. It's all speculation. Again, in the act of transparency, I own 25 shares of that card through Collectible. But I'd say that again, whether I did or I didn't own those 25 shares. And let's keep in mind, those shares cost $3 a piece. So I have a $75 stake into that potentially $10 million card, if you will. Let's go back into those higher submission, prices. I like a Beckett graded card and a PSA graded card as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to sub a card at $200, $250, $300. I'm not gonna. Maybe the only exception to that rule is a very, 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 very high end. I'm talking very expensive. I mean, I have expensive cards, but I'm talking at upper echelon stuff. Maybe that's something I acquired that it's not graded, or I'm going to purchase something if I won the Mega Millions, But I'm generally I'm out when it comes to triple digits almost for just grading a card. Again, I never say never, but I've never done it to this point. And if you believe in 2-3 companies, like I said, I have cards of all three. I have even a couple CSG graded cards. Now, I didn't submit them. I didn't buy them directly. They were in a collection buyout that I purchased. Those cards were in that shoebox that I purchased. So I didn't buy that shoebox for those two cards that were in there specifically, but they were just in the mix. So at the moment, till I maybe sell them or move them, I have 2 CSG cards. But other than that, the only graded inventory I have is the 3 I mentioned: PSA, SGC, and Beckett graded cards, and those 2 CSGs. And I explain how I acquired those. I have subbed, though, to PSA, Beckett, and SG, all of them, and submitted to all 3. I think they're all 3 good at what they do. Yes, I know there's some controversies with grades, which are subjective, right? That's a subjective. I get it. I would have no problem subbing to all 3, but then it comes down to that price level. And what I want to know is what the end game is for those 2 companies, if you will, that are in that triple digit sub price. When or if they're going to lower the prices. Now, I've heard rumors, and that's all they are. Anyone can say anything they want to, right, on social media. I have that luxury too, if I wanted to. But I've heard people say that PSA doesn't want to grade those lesser cards, and that they're not going to really come down. Or if they come down in price, it's not going to be anywhere near where they used to be at the economy level. So I've heard things where their lowest level is going to be $50. I've heard things where their lowest level is going to be $100. I've heard similar things with Beckett, but I've heard it more with PSA. When Jeremy Murray was on Sports Card Nation, he was very transparent. Had a couple great conversations even with him not on the air. I found him very sincere. And he said during that interview, you can go back and listen to it, that he really doesn't want to keep prices at that level, but they had to as an act of necessity with the overflow in intake. So he says as soon as they can, he wants to come back down to reasonable levels. He even mentioned, while they may never do it again, that 10 for $10 each. And I remember those days, and I kind of chuckled when he said that, knowing internally that probably we've seen the last of those days. And we're in a different economic market where cards are at today. So I get it. I'm not expecting that. I'm not being critical of that. But I'd love to see, if someone asked me, well, John, you want a lower level. What level are you talking about? How much, right? I like that $20, $25. SGC's at $30 right now. I like that $20, $25 level, even if there's no guaranteed turnaround time, even if it's a couple months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, guarantee, or more at that lower level. I'll wait. I'm pretty patient. I got a lot of cards, and while I do shows, and actually I haven't done a show with the pandemic, but under normal pretenses, I do shows every few months, one every few months. I can go without some cards that are in for submission. I got plenty to fill the showcases. So I'm in no real rush. And if I was in a real rush, right, there's that higher level, express level, that I'd have to buck up and pay for it and get my card back quicker if so be it. So, I like grading. It's something, if you've heard me say before, I initially didn't like grading. I thought it was a money grab, but I think it serves a role in the hobby. Again, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, and you can enjoy the hobby without owning or buying one single graded card. And I know people who can attest to that, and there's nothing wrong with that. So another thing I get asked is if I can change anything other than submission price levels and how long it takes for your card to come back, what would it be? And I think what I like to see is more integrity. Here's what I mean by that. If you are paying for a guaranteed turnaround time, so example, you're paying $100, and I'm just making up numbers and levels here. You pay $100, and you're supposed to have it back within 20 days. You should have it back within 20 days, and if you don't, you should get money back. If it takes longer than 20 days, but it's within 30 days, maybe you get $20 back. If it takes 40 days, maybe you get $30, $40 back. I mean, there should be some sort of onus to honor sort of the contract you agree to. But we all know right now, even at some of those guaranteed, I'm doing air quotes here, guaranteed levels, even when your cards don't come back in the guaranteed time, you're not giving anything. You're just getting your cards back later than you wanted them to, right? I've heard in some cases a grading company would give a voucher maybe for a free grading submission, and if that's the case, kudos to them. It's probably a nice gesture, but I'd rather see them just honor the turnaround times at those significant price levels. And so that would be one pet peeve if I had a grading magic wand, if you will. And the other one is upcharges, right? And I understand that if it's a more expensive card, that it's going to cost more to insure, to send it back. And sure, that cost should be, paid by the consumer or the submitter. I understand that fully. But we hear these upcharges where they're more than what the insurance cards are. And it always kind of rubs me the wrong way that, is is a Michael Jordan rookie a better card than a Griffey 89 Upper Deck rookie? Sure. No one on this planet would say otherwise. But, they're both one card, right? If you submit each of those cards, they're going to be graded by the same company. Now, I've heard people make the argument, well, some, with the significance of the Jordan, maybe they bring in more eyes. I think generally, a lot of cards are looked at. Most grading companies have more than one person assess it. Not all the time, I don't think, but I think in a lot of cases. And so you're paying for one card. Why charge the consumer more just because it's a better card that has to be looked at in the same way, right? They're grading it the same way. If they're a grading company with integrity, right? They grade the card the same way. I'll tell you a quick story for a company way back when I used to work for in the service field. And I was a young John Newman, if you will. And the owner of that company said, hey, here's an invoice. You got to do this job. This is my daughter's house. And take good care of her. And I said, boss, I'm gonna take the same care of her as I would if she wasn't your daughter. And at first, he kind of propped up in his chair. He thought I was, sort of being almost rude, like I was, sort of saying, she's no one. And then I explained to him that I would treat anyone, and when I'm in someone's house, I'm going to be respectful and provide the great service for the company, no matter who they are. And so she would get the same great service that anyone else would. And he made a point of that. We had these little quarterly meetings or monthly meetings, and he, I think there was a monthly Employee of the Month award, and I won it that month. And he told that story of my line about his daughter. And so I use that story not to brag about winning an Employee a Month, 25 years ago, but more to say, like, I provide the great service for everybody, right? Well, they should be providing great integrity and grading service for every card the same. Why should you pay more because that card's worth more? Has four corners, right? Like the other cards. It's got a surface. It's got a back. It's grade the card. And that's one of my pet peeves. I don't think it's going to change, but I can still sort of nitpick and pet peeve about it. So, here's the nice thing, folks, about where the grading industry is right now. There are companies charging normal prices. There are companies with fast turnaround time. There are companies doing that with pretty decent resale values, if that's your end game. You have options out there. I hear things, well, that they're not worth as much as that. The beauty is in the fact that we, the consumer, dictate that, right, with our actions. And we've seen companies make strides and close those gaps. And I think we'll continue to see that. So I hope that kind of gave you a little bit of my insight on the grading niche. Whether you like it or not, I hope you found it interesting. And again, that's the beauty, right? Even if you don't like graded cards, you can still enjoy the hobby in so many different ways. So with that being said, I hope everyone's well. Be safe. Continue to be well. We'll see you next week with another episode of Hobby Quick Hits. And remember, Friday, Sports Card Nation. Thanks, everybody. Take care. All right. Thank you for listening to another episode of Hobby Quick Hits. Want to give out our social media, starting with our website, which is www.sportscardnationpodcast.com. Facebook, you can follow us at www.facebook.com/sportscardnationpodcast/ Twitter, we are at sportscardnati1, so it's sportscard NATI1. Instagram at Sports Card Nation Podcast. or you can email the show, hobbyquickhits@gmail.com. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.